Hello, and welcome to this week's video blog from the Center for Human Awakening. My name is Rob Meager. I'm co-founder of the center along with Richard Harvey. And today, I'll enjoy sharing with you a reading from Richard Harvey's book, Yourself. And our reading is titled Personal Stories. On the inner journey, we are the adventurer, the explorer, the voyager to inner realms, the traveler who finds joy and fulfillment in discovering the new, moving on, never staying still, a spirit in movement, in search of the spontaneous, and open to whatever comes. But inevitably, experience calcifies into the record of memory, legend, and personal mythology that creates a personal story. We constantly revive our personal history by recounting it to relatives, friends, and new acquaintances. Explanations followed by resentments, frustrated accounts, and tales of modesty and glory, boasting and self-aggrandizement, disillusionment, and injustice project our self-image, so the person receiving the desired impression can behave as we want them to, think about us as we want them to, and assume and expect what we want them to. The story of our life seems to have accrued in layers of experience, a series of events and periods of development, an unfolding narrative. As we retell our personal story, both inwardly and outwardly, we compound our narrative and invent a sequence of personal stories. We are, as the Buddhists would say, perpetually creating beings. Spinning our individual narrative, we create the life of a somebody defined by relationships and conditions. We may be someone who is beaten or thwarted by the world, a failure or a victim. We may be someone who is successful, fortunate, fulfilled. We may be someone who is burdened with duty and responsibility, or someone who doesn't really fit in or feel a part of anything. The permutations are endless and unique to each person. We all have a story that defines who we are. We all have a story to tell. But how fixed are our stories? Our personal narratives depend not only on circumstances and events, but also on the perspective from which we view them. How we look at an experience dictates the experience itself, and how we remember creates the stories we tell and believe about ourselves. If we think we are separate from what happens to us, we see life as a duality because there is always a subject, me, and an object, what happens to me. Alternatively, if we think of ourselves as part of life, then we see unity and connectedness between me and events. Negative experiences can have positive outcomes. A near-death experience can lead to a spiritual awakening. The loss of a highly paid job can enable someone to do what they always wanted to do. Positive experiences can have negative outcomes. A whirlwind romance leads to an early marriage, but ends in an acrimonious divorce. A financial windfall leads to a life of excess, ill health, and an early death. The nature of our perception is changeable. The experiences defined by our perceptions are never truly fixed, but merely how we see them at the time. Mostly we see things from the driving seat of our ego. In Greek mythology, Sisyphus, cheated death but was condemned to roll a huge stone uphill for eternity. When the stone reached the top, it was driven back and rolled down to the bottom of the hill where Sisyphus, his task began all over again. The hell of Sisyphus resembles how we are bound to our personal stories. Sisyphus needs only to stop and make the decision never to roll the stone up the hill again, but he is condemned to keep it rolling. Like Sisyphus, we seem doomed to react and reenact our stories, producing the same series of emotional, physical, and mental reactions unless we refuse to be enslaved to our character any longer. When we are unaware, our behavior is automatic and habitual. Instead of stopping and reflecting, we become fixed, consistent, and imprisoned by the character we have created. We are attached to a mass of personal habits that support our creation. We imprison ourselves in these limitations and call it suffering. Our small sense of self thrives on limitation. And even when we attempt to shed our old habits, it counters our efforts by imposing its will in order to avoid change. We want to change, but change is beyond our personal will. We cannot force change, but we can create the conditions for change to enter our lives through openness, surrender, and grace. Change is all around us, always happening. We are in a sea of it. All we need to do is create the right conditions and wait. Some life events challenge the limitations of our character and make us look deeper into how we see ourselves and others. Such life events may even take us to the very edge of our resistance to change. They reveal the power of habit and fixedness and directly challenge our ego control and personal narrative. As we reveal our stories to ourselves and others, a new clarity dawns inside us, and with it comes a new freedom. As we become familiar with our personal narrative, we see how we cling to it out of fear. We notice things we hadn't seen before and understand more. We have to work backward to make a new sense of the world. We see how we have masked our feelings of futility through compulsive doing and avoided life in all its spontaneous, uncertain creations. How we have preferred to talk, conceptualize, and do rather than simply be. How we have fallen into habitual and numbing familiarity. How we have felt desire and lack and made survival our modest aim and compulsive focus. When we become separate from existence, life becomes our enemy. Our fixed selves abhor the natural flow of change until we truly see ourselves.